Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. Now, after Wang Yi visited India and hoped for success in the upcoming SCO summit with Prime Minister Narendra Modi attending it, the Chinese foreign minister then flew to Kabul, where he held a trilateral meeting with his counterparts from Afghanistan and indeed Pakistan. The focus was on the expansion of their cooperation in multiple areas, including the extension of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is also called CPEC. Should this worry India?
In a move that could raise eyebrows in New Delhi, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, after his visit to India, held a trilateral foreign ministers dialogue among China, Afghanistan and Pakistan in Kabul. Wang Yi met Taliban Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi and Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar and discussed the economic initiatives as part of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. The foreign ministers have agreed to expand their cooperation in multiple fields, including the extension of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. This is the first visit by the Chinese foreign minister to Afghanistan since the Taliban came to power in 2021 and the third by Dar to the Afghan capital since April. After meeting Prime Minister Modi, Wang Yi flew to Kabul and then to Islamabad. During the trilateral meet, Wang Yi said that China is willing to deepen trust with Afghanistan and Pakistan, mutually understand and support each other on issues involving each other's core interests, firmly oppose any external forces interfering in this region, and firmly oppose any organization or individual engaging in activities within their own territories that harm each other's national sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. After bilateral and trilateral meetings, Wang Yi arrived in Islamabad for bilateral talks with his Pakistani counterpart Ishaq Dar. He is also co-chairing the 6th Pakistan-China Foreign Ministers Strategic Dialogue. During his meeting with Dar, both the ministers reviewed Pakistan-China relations and discussed important regional and global issues. Wang Yi reaffirmed China-Pakistan relations and said that both the countries had withstood the test of time and was not directed against any third country. Pakistan's economic instability in recent years has seen top civilian and military leaderships engaging with both Western and Eastern leaders. The most recent talked about visit was that of Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir's visit to Washington, where he attended a lunch meeting hosted by US President Donald Trump. China and Pakistan will likely announce the second phase of CPEC during Shehbaz Sharif's visit to China later this month. This comes at a time when India and China are renewing ties since the 2020 Galwan standoff. CPEC 2 is seen as a remedy for Pakistan's economic ailments, flagging special economic zones, modern agricultural initiatives, technology investments, and enhanced connectivity spearheaded by the Gwadar Port. With Marshwit Alala, Bureau Report, India Today.
On statecraft, we decode what CPEC 2.0 means, China's $62 billion infrastructure project that would lead to strategic encirclement of India. Here's an excerpt of my take. You can watch the entire analysis on our YouTube channel, India Today Global. Take a look. One of the most consequential geopolitical developments is reshaping South Asia.
In the first phase, CPEC has been immensely helpful in meeting our energy requirements. And now I think we have to move into the second phase.
A $62 billion infrastructure project has evolved into something far more ambitious and potentially dangerous. This is the story of CPEC 2.0, that's China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, China's strategic masterstroke that's sending shockwaves through New Delhi and beyond. Imagine this, a 3,000-kilometer corridor stretching from China's western regions to Pakistan's Arabian Sea coast.
As far as dealing with CPEC 2.0 or CPEC is concerned, I think the best way of dealing with it is to deal with China diplomatically.
Roads, railways, power plants, and a strategic port that could reshape global trade routes. But here's the twist. This isn't just about economics anymore, and I'll explain why. Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. What we are witnessing isn't merely Pakistan seeking Chinese investment. It's a desperate nation betting its sovereignty on Beijing's grand strategy. Let me paint you the picture of Pakistan's predicament. Pakistan is drowning, foreign reserves depleted, IMF dependency chronic, structural reforms delayed. When Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif boards that plane to Beijing later this month, he's not just launching CPEC 2.0, he's potentially signing away whatever economic independence Pakistan has left. But here's where it gets fascinating. China isn't offering charity, it's offering transformation through integration. 5 new economic corridors, each designed to embed Pakistan deeper into China's sphere. Special economic zones where Chinese factories relocate. Agricultural modernization where Chinese agribusiness takes root. Technology partnerships where Chinese surveillance capabilities expand. Let's shift our focus to the player watching this unfold with growing alarm: India. For New Delhi, CPEC 2.0 represents nothing short of a strategic nightmare. Imagine waking up to find your neighbor has not only occupied part of your backyard, but has now invited a rival superpower to build permanent structures there. That's exactly what's happening in Gilgit-Baltistan. The corridor runs directly through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Now, with CPEC 2.0 expanding special economic zones in these areas, China is effectively normalizing Pakistan's illegal occupation. It's a fait accompli strategy that's both brilliant and deeply concerning. But the real crown jewel, or should I say, the real threat, is Gwadar Port. Officially, it's a commercial facility. Unofficially? Well, ask yourself this. When has China ever built major infrastructure without considering its dual-use potential? Gwadar sits at the mouth of the Persian Gulf, controlling access to some of the world's most crucial shipping lanes. For India's Navy, this represents a fundamental shift in Indian Ocean dynamics.
Strategic location-wise, Gwadar is one of the finest ports. In fact, as early as 50s, I think the ADBs had identified Gwadar as one of the best location for a transshipment port. And that's why Pakistan subsequently went for it. But economic viability has been a question mark. And that's been primarily because Gwadar has not been successfully connected with the Pakistani hinterland. As of now, it's connected only with the coastal highway. And it does not make economic sense to offload goods at Gwadar and take them by coastal highway almost close to Karachi and then take them up. So as long as Balochistan remains restive and there is no safety and security of goods and cargo that is moving through it, I don't visualize Gwadar being economically viable. And that is the situation as far as CPEC is concerned. And as long as Baloch continue to feel that CPEC is nothing but an instrument which Islamabad is using to colonize their land, I don't think so there's likely to be peace in this part of the world.
This brings us to China's broader string of pearls strategy, a network of strategic facilities stretching from Gwadar to Hambantota in Sri Lanka, Kayokpyu in Myanmar. India is slowly being encircled. But here's where the plot thickens even further. Enter Afghanistan. On the 20th of August, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi made his first visit to Kabul in over 3 years. The message crystal clear. China is ready to extend CPEC into Afghanistan, creating a trilateral framework that could reshape regional security forever. Think about this strategically. China gets direct land access to Central Asian markets whilst addressing Xinjiang security concerns. Pakistan gains a Western economic outlet and Chinese mediation with the Taliban. Afghanistan receives desperately needed investment and international legitimacy. And India? India gets surrounded. Joining me now is Strategic Affairs expert Professor Brahma Chelani. This is a very important issue and aspect that we are covering right now, from Russia, India, China to the Pakistan factor. Brahma, thank you so much for joining us here. Your assessment on India's engagements now with China vis-a-vis the tariffs that have been slapped on India and the need for India now to look at China and Russia yet again.
India is seeking to enlarge its strategic options. It's seeking to balance its economic relationships. At the same time, it wants to improve its regional security environment. And these factors have prompted the Modi government to seek a thaw in relations with China. But the question is whether there is any fundamental change in Chinese attitude towards India. We haven't seen any tangible change in China's attitude other than seeking to engage India while continuing to mount pressure on India. So engagement with containment has been China's strategy for long. I think by engaging India and by having the Prime Minister visit China for the SCO summit, and there will likely be a bilateral on the sidelines between Modi and Xi Jinping, China can show that the only power in Asia that refused to play with Beijing, that took its own independent line, India, had finally decided to mend relations with China. In other words, China wants to show that in Asia there is no challenger to its dominance. Even Japan now seeks to appease China. So India was the only power in Asia that sought to challenge China geopolitically, militarily, the way India stood up to China along the line of actual control for several years since 2020. So for China, having this kind of engagement with India at the highest level possible, with the Prime Minister of India visiting China, that is good diplomacy for China. It's able to show to the world that it has managed to stay its ground and yet get India to agree to mend bilateral relations.
You make a very important point over here, because in the past, Brahma, we'd see that if there was a visit that was to take place, the host country was always sensitive to issues that concern the invited countries. This time around, that's not the case. Just ahead of the Tianjin SCO summit, we're looking at Wang Yi going to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then we're looking at a CPEC 2.0. What's your reading on all that is at play over here? Can India really trust China? How much can India really trust China?
It speaks for itself that after meeting Modi and the Foreign Minister Jaishankar and the NSA Doval, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi traveled to Pakistan and Afghanistan. In Pakistan, he is currently there for a strategic dialogue that Beijing describes as aimed at further deepening the all-weather strategic partnership with Pakistan. And the timing of it all, just weeks ago, China acted as an invisible third party in the India-Pakistan three-day war, providing Pakistan with real-time intelligence, radar, and satellite inputs, according to India's own Deputy Army Chief. And then last month, China officially acknowledged for the first time that it's constructing the largest dam ever conceived in human history, right on the India border, just a few miles from the heavy militarized border with Arunachal Pradesh. So right after that, we are seeing Wang Yi come to India and Prime Minister Modi preparing to go to China. And I think that what really stands out, at least as far as I'm concerned, because I take a broader view of things, is that successive Indian officials at the highest level said that restoration of status quo ante in Eastern Ladakh was a prerequisite for India fully normalizing relations with China. Right? We had the defense minister say that, we had the Indian Army chief say that, but
it's
now...
a policy statement by India, yes.
It was, right? But Modi's upcoming visit indicates that India has effectively dropped restoration of the pre-April 2020 territorial status quo in Eastern Ladakh. It's ready and, in fact, moving to fully normalize relations with China. It is, according to Finance Minister Sitharaman, India is ready to further liberalize trade with China, even though China's bilateral trade surplus with India is close to $100 billion. It's, in fact, it surpassed India's total defense budget three or 4 years ago. And yet, we are ready to further liberalize trade with China. We have agreed to resumption of direct commercial flights between China and India. And we've also agreed to other measures, some seemingly innocuous, some significant. For example, if you look at the bilateral agreement to set up 2 new border groups. Now, on surface, this looks like a good move, except that since 1981, India and China have been engaged in border negotiations, and every few years, new groups are set up, or the discussion, the negotiations are reclassified under a different name. It began as a senior level dialogue in 1981, then in 1988 became joint working group, then much later it became senior representatives talk, and now we have had several working groups, now 2 new groups. What all this
the
indicates?
WMCC and the military bloc, yes.
Yeah, but now under those 2 larger groups, 2 new groups are to be set up under the agreement reached a couple of days ago in New Delhi when Wang Yi was holding talks with Inese Doval. The point to note is that an unsettled border with India is what China wants to perpetuate, because an unsettled border provides China leverage. It also provides China the opening to incrementally keep changing the territorial status quo, to look for openings where it can actually encroach, can intrude, it can occupy areas that are not perennially patrolled by Indian troops, because it's impossible to patrol every square meter of this inhospitable Himalayan frontier. So an unsettled border is very much not only in China's interest, that is its goal. So it has never sought to settle the border with India. And the question that that we need to ask ourselves is, why do we play along? Why do we play along? Because we know what China's goal is. And yet we agree periodically, and this has happened in the successive governments in India, that we agree to set up new mechanisms or new groups, knowing that this will lead to nowhere because China is not interested in settling the border question.
Right. Brahma, I'd like to zoom out a little, so stay on with me. A brief reaction on the Russia question over here. And the reactions from Moscow have come. External Affairs Minister is on a visit to Russia, and it is at a very crucial moment when India is being accused by the US of buying Russian oil and helping in funding the Russia-Ukraine war. India has been slapped with additional tariff of 25% for purchasing that very same oil. And now we're looking at how the White House has said that this additional tariff on India was a way to deter Russia from pursuing Ukraine war. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, too, reiterated that India was just profiteering from buying and selling Russian oil. But the External Affairs Minister and the Foreign Minister of Russia and Jaishankar both have reacted to this. Listen in to what they had to say.
We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian oil, that is China. We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian LNG. I'm not sure, but I think that is the European Union. We are not the country which has the biggest trade surge with Russia after 2022. I think there are some countries to the south. We are a country where actually the Americans said for the last few years that we should do everything to stabilize the world energy markets, including buying oil from Russia. Incidentally, we also buy oil from America, and that amount has been increasing. So, quite honestly, we are very perplexed at the logic of the argument that you had referred to.
Есть у нас хорошие результаты.
We have good results in cooperation in the sphere of hydrocarbons and the supply of Russian oil to the Indian market. And we have a mutual interest in implementing joint projects for the extraction of energy resources, including in the Russian Federation, in the Far East and on the Arctic shelf.
Арктическом шельфе.
Well, Brahma, coming back to you, the Indian administration might have wanted to take a very strong stand against China, but do you think Trump's position and the change in the way Trump has reacted to and acted with India is the reason why we're looking at a closer Russia-India-China bloc?
The US-India relationship began fraying when Joe Biden was in the White House. And that clearly was a factor that led to the Kazan meeting between Modi and Xi Jinping and the agreement to improve bilateral relations. So there is a pattern to how US-India disputes have prompted India to enlarge its strategic options by improving relations with China. That makes sense because you don't want to create perpetual enmity with China. You want to have flexibility. You also want to have more options, and you certainly don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. But Russia-India equation is a different one because that's been a very stable equation over the decades, and that relationship remains very important for India's long-term security. The reasons why India and the then Soviet Union signed a friendship treaty in 1971, those considerations and factors have not fundamentally changed, even though the world has changed. But the underlying elements that prompted Moscow and New Delhi in 1971 to sign that friendship treaty still hold to a large extent. Right. They still hold valid. And that's why the Russia-India relationship is still going strong. But what's very odd at the moment is that on one hand, as the Alaska summit showed, that Trump is seeking better relations with Russia because he has realized that American policy has forced two historic rivals, Russia and China, to come closer together and create a two against one competition with the US at the receiving end. He wants to change that. He wants to change the strategic geometry of this strategic triangle, the US, Russia, China triangle. He wants this two against one dynamic to break by co-opting Russia. In other words, he's trying to do what Nixon did when he reached out to Mao. Nixon's China opening created a two against one competition against the Soviet Union. Now Trump believes that time has come for the US to improve relations with Russia, especially by ending the Ukraine war, so that US and Russia can be on one side against China. But at the same time, the Trump administration and the president himself is using Russian energy exports as a tool to pressure India. The fact is that Russian oil is not the reason why Trump has imposed this 25% additional tariffs, which, as the White House admitted 2 days ago, are sanctions against India. These 25% additional tariffs are a crude bargaining tactic by Trump to get a trade deal with India on his terms. He's basically trying to strong arm India into signing on to a trade deal of the kind that he wants.
Well, it does seem like India is really stuck between America and, on the other side, China. But what is India really going to do is the big question. Is India going to do, as Professor Brahmachalani says, not put all its eggs in one basket, making that mistake yet again, or will there be diversification when it comes to engagement with these countries? Professor Brahmachalani, thank you so much for joining us. Well, that's all the time we have in this edition of India Today Global. Keep watching India Today for all the latest news and updates. Thank you, goodbye, and take care.